Have you ever experienced a moment where someone's words or actions completely derailed your entire day? Perhaps it was a harsh comment, a careless gesture, or even just an unexpected setback. It stings, doesn't it? But here's something important. No one actually holds the power to control your inner state unless you willingly give them that power. What if you could remain steady and composed, regardless of what life or anyone around you decides to throw at you? Picture yourself moving through each day, carrying a sense of calm so deep and rooted that even the most aggravating circumstances couldn't shake you. That's not a fantasy, that's emotional mastery. In this episode, we're exploring 10 life-changing lessons that will help you break the habit of reacting without thinking, release anger, and take back ownership of your emotional world. These lessons aren't about pretending everything is fine or burying your feelings. They're about developing the inner strength needed to move through life's hardships with dignity and wisdom. Whether you're navigating harsh feedback, building stronger boundaries, or finally releasing old bitterness, you'll walk away with real tools to guard your inner peace and move forward with genuine confidence. By the time this episode ends, you'll carry both the mindset and the strategies required to stay grounded, even when circumstances feel anything but manageable. So, if you're genuinely ready to discover the path to emotional freedom and build a life where nobody else gets to dictate how you feel, then let's begin. Your path toward emotional mastery starts right here, right now. 1. Understand that how you respond belongs entirely to you. Picture a calm, ordinary day. Perhaps you're enjoying a warm drink or taking a leisurely stroll, when out of nowhere, someone says something rude or thoughtless. Your peace evaporates, replaced by a wave of irritation or hurt, and you find yourself thinking, why did they have to ruin this for me? But here's the honest answer. They didn't ruin anything. You allowed it to happen. Your emotional state is your own responsibility, not the burden of anyone else. No one can hijack how you feel without your permission. Think of it this way. The world will always present challenges and difficult people, but the decision of how to meet those moments rests completely with you. Let me offer a new way of seeing this. Imagine you're wearing a pair of noise-cancelling headphones while standing in the middle of a loud, crowded street. The noise of traffic, arguments, and chaos still exists out there, but it simply doesn't penetrate. Building emotional strength works exactly like that. You don't have to allow the turbulence of other people's conduct to seep into your inner world. There's a timeless observation that captures this idea perfectly. Between any event and your reaction, there exists a gap, and inside that gap lives your freedom. The freedom to choose how you respond rather than simply reacting out of habit. When someone cuts in front of you on the road or dismisses your hard work without fairness, it's tempting to hold them responsible for your anger. But what if you paused instead? In that moment of pause, you discover something remarkable. The ability to select calm instead of chaos, and wisdom instead of impulsive reaction. Here's a practical scenario. Imagine a colleague brushes off your contribution during a team discussion. Rather than lashing out verbally or quietly fuming for the remainder of the day, take a slow breath and consider, honestly, is this actually about me, or is this person dealing with their own pressures and projections? Simply by reframing the situation, you strip it of its power to damage your mood. The beauty of this entire approach is that it isn't about suppression, it's about recognizing that your feelings and your actions are two different things. Anger, hurt, and disappointment are completely human and natural, but they don't have to drive the car. When you feel triggered, Try this. First, pause and name the emotion you're experiencing, whether it's frustration, irritation, or wounded pride. Just naming it interrupts the automatic reaction cycle. Then reflect on whether your response is being shaped by what actually happened or by your interpretation of it. And finally, make a deliberate choice about how to act, guided by your values and your desire for lasting peace rather than momentary heat. Imagine living each day without being held hostage by what others say or do. The careless stranger, the thoughtless word, the small daily annoyance. All of these lose their ability to shake you once you own your reactions. In every single situation you face, you get to choose. You can hand control of your emotional world to other people, or you can take it firmly back and defend your peace. The next time someone pushes at you, remember this. Their conduct is a reflection of who they are. Your response is a reflection of who you are. And each time you choose calm, you don't just win the moment, you win a deeper kind of freedom. 2. Release the habit of expecting others to mirror your values. You extend yourself fully for the people in your life. You show up consistently, you prioritize and sacrifice. And then, when you find yourself in a moment of genuine need, those same people seem to vanish. The disappointment hits hard, and the thought that surfaces is, how can they act this way? I would never treat someone like this. But here is the difficult truth that most people resist accepting. Others do not operate according to your personal code or your moral compass. They act from their own inner world, their own conditioning, and their own set of priorities. Expecting people to think, feel, and behave exactly as you do is like standing outside and trying to negotiate with the rain. It simply cannot work. And the only person who suffers from the effort is you. Consider this. Every person moving through life is on a path shaped entirely by their own history, their formative experiences, their deeply held beliefs, and their own emotional wounds. When someone behaves in a way that frustrates or hurts you, that behavior almost never has anything to do with your worth. It has everything to do with where they are on their own journey. Spending your energy trying to change or redirect people who have no interest in changing only leaves you feeling drained and powerless. Rather than staying locked in a fantasy of who people should be, try shifting your attention toward accepting who they actually are. Here's a simple illustration. Imagine a colleague who has the persistent habit of talking over others in group settings. Rather than sitting in silent frustration, each meeting or crafting a plan to correct their behavior. Consider this. Their habit exists completely apart from you. By releasing the expectation that they will change you immediately, release the emotional weight attached to their behavior. A profound observation rings true here. Our expectations of others are often the invisible architects of our own suffering. The less you require others to match your standard of behavior, the more protected and peaceful your internal world becomes. To begin working with this, try something practical. When someone upsets you, pause and honestly ask yourself, what exactly was I expecting from them? Then examine whether that expectation is even realistic, given who this person genuinely is, rather than who you wish them to be. And once you've done that work, shift your focus entirely away from their behavior and toward your own response, toward the calm and clarity you want to carry. Consider how liberating that shift actually is. The stranger who cuts you off, the friend who forgets you, the colleague who dismisses your effort. None of them can touch your emotional world unless you open the door. When you stop requiring others to meet a standard they never agreed to, you reclaim something powerful. you reclaim yourself. At the end of the day, people are who they are, not the version you've constructed in your mind. Making peace with this reality is not the same as accepting mistreatment or abandoning what you believe in. It simply means acknowledging that your inner peace is far too precious to trade away for something you never had the power to control in the first place. The next time someone lets you down, pause and remind yourself, they are operating from their own nature, and I am choosing my response from mine. And in that choice, everything changes. 3. Free yourself from the compulsion to always win the argument. Think back to a recent disagreement. Perhaps it centered on something completely minor, like which direction to take, or perhaps it involved a deeper tension with someone you care about. As emotions rose, did you feel that pull, that almost physical urge to hold your ground, to make absolutely certain the other person understood you were right? Most of us have lived this moment, gripping our version of events like it's the only thing keeping us steady. But the truth worth sitting with is this. The drive to always be right doesn't come from strength. It comes from fear. It comes from a place where being wrong feels like an attack on our identity or our value. But what if you could simply put that need down entirely? What if, instead of entering every disagreement like a battle, you approached it with genuine openness and curiosity? Here's a question worth asking yourself, honestly. Would you rather be right, or would you rather have peace? Because our fierce insistence on winning arguments routinely creates lasting damage. It builds walls between people, it turns small misunderstandings into deep wounds, and it burns through enormous amounts of emotional energy that could be spent on something actually meaningful. Letting go of the need to constantly prove yourself, on the other hand, opens up a completely different kind of relationship with conflict, one where you can stay calm, stay connected, and stay true to yourself without the exhausting weight of always needing the final word. Imagine a situation where someone accuses you of something you feel is completely unfair. Your immediate instinct is to defend, push back, correct, and prove your case. But what if you stopped and simply asked yourself, is spending my energy on this going to change anything that genuinely matters in my life? In the vast majority of cases, the honest answer is no. Here's an example you might recognize. A good friend insists with complete confidence that their approach to a shared problem is superior to yours. Instead of pulling out counter-arguments, you might simply say, I hear where you're coming from, and I genuinely respect that. Not because you agree, but because you've decided the relationship matters more than the score. That single choice diffuses tension, preserves your calm, and keeps the connection intact. A wise teacher from ancient tradition offered this insight. The person who cannot release their fixed views will never truly expand. Letting go of winning doesn't mean becoming a pushover or abandoning what you stand for. It means developing the discernment to know which conflicts deserve your full engagement and which ones simply don't. When you feel the argument building inside you, take a breath before you speak and honestly ask whether this is worth your energy. Then, rather than pushing for victory, try to genuinely understand what the other person is experiencing. That shift alone can dissolve conflict before it fully forms. And when something truly important is at stake, something connected to your core values or your real well-being, then absolutely engage fully. But be selective with your energy because it is precious and finite. As time passes, you'll notice something wonderful about this approach. You feel lighter. You move through your days without the accumulated tension of every unresolved dispute. Conversations stop feeling like contests and start feeling like connections again. Because you've made a quiet but powerful choice. You've chosen your peace over your pride. And the next time that old temptation to argue comes rising up, simply remind yourself, being right won't bring me what I'm actually looking for, but staying calm absolutely will. 4. Stop allowing the words of others to become the measure of your value. Picture the scene. You're sharing something you've poured genuine energy and thought into, and before the feeling of excitement even has a chance to settle, someone responds with dismissal or indifference, and just like that, the confidence you carried into the room begins to drain away. The reason this happens so reliably is that most of us have unknowingly built our sense of self on what others reflect back to us. When the reflection is positive, we feel worthy. When it's negative or absent, we feel diminished. But here is the reality that can genuinely free you. Your value as a human being does not live in anyone else's opinion of you. It is not elevated by their praise, and it is not reduced by their criticism. When you hand other people the pen that writes your self-worth, you give them complete control over how you feel, and that is too enormous a thing to give away. True emotional freedom arrives when you take that pen back. Consider a moment where a co-worker criticizes your work, not with the intention of helping you improve, but with a tone that feels dismissive or even unkind. Your instinct might be to defend yourself, to explain, justify, or feel quietly wounded. But what if you could pause in that moment and remind yourself that what they've said tells you about their perspective, not your worth? By separating your value from their words, you protect something essential: your steadiness, your focus, and your ability to move forward clearly. A brilliant observer of human nature once noted how remarkable it is that we love ourselves deeply, yet we grant the opinions of others authority over how we actually feel about ourselves. This isn't about closing yourself off from all feedback, or deciding that no one's words ever matter. It is about learning to distinguish between what is genuinely useful and what is simply noise. Criticism that helps you see something you missed that's worth holding. Constructive feedback offered with care that's worth examining. But words meant to wound or diminish, or simply born of someone's own unresolved frustration, those deserve no space inside your mind. Here's something practical to carry with you. When someone says something that stings, before you react, pause and breathe. Let that small gap exist. Then ask yourself honestly, is there something here that's actually true and useful, or is this simply this person's projection? If there's something real and useful, take it. Learn from it, be grateful for it, and if it's just noise, let it pass through without setting up a home inside you. Remind yourself in that moment that your value is not a moving target subject to revision every time someone opens their mouth. It is fixed, it is intrinsic, and it belongs to no one but you. A deeply wise voice from Eastern philosophy once observed that caring obsessively about what others think makes you a prisoner of their perception. And who would choose that life? By releasing the need for constant external approval, you don't become cold or indifferent. You simply stop allowing your emotional well-being to hinge on whether someone else approves of your choices, your work, or your existence. The next time another person's words shake your ground, pause and ask yourself, have I just let someone else decide what I'm worth? And then reclaim that authority, because no one's words can diminish you unless you give them permission. And the strength to know your own worth, regardless of outside noise, that's not arrogance, that's freedom. 5. Defend your inner world by learning to hold clear limits. Imagine a scenario: your phone rings mid-afternoon while you're deep in something that matters. It's a friend needing help with something they could genuinely manage on their own. Or perhaps someone at work drops a last-minute responsibility onto your plate with the unspoken assumption that you'll simply absorb it. You feel the tug of obligation, but underneath it sits a quiet frustration, because you know this will cost you, and yet saying no feels impossibly hard. Here's the truth that most people never fully accept until they're already burned out. Holding your boundaries is not a selfish act. It is an act of genuine responsibility. When you say yes to everything and everyone without limit, you are by default saying no to yourself, and eventually that price becomes too high. A useful way to think about it is this: you genuinely cannot offer from a place of emptiness. When you give continuously without replenishing yourself, without protecting your energy and your time, you eventually arrive at a place of exhaustion, resentment, and disconnection, and that serves no one. Boundaries are the structures that make sustained generosity possible. They allow you to show up fully for the people and purposes that truly matter, rather than spreading yourself so thin that your presence means very little anywhere. Consider this reality. When someone consistently oversteps what's comfortable for you, the responsibility for changing that dynamic rests with you, because people respond to what they're shown is acceptable, and unless you communicate otherwise, they'll simply continue operating the way they always have, often without any awareness that they're creating difficulty. Here's a realistic example. Perhaps you're the person that friends call at all hours when they're struggling, and while your care for them is real, the late-night emotional weight is depleting your reserves. Instead of building silent resentment, try something honest and kind. I genuinely care about you, and I want to support you, and I need my evenings to recharge. So let's connect tomorrow and talk this through. That simple statement is both true and firm. It preserves the relationship while also honoring your needs. Ancient wisdom reminds us that freedom is nothing more than the ability to live in accordance with your own nature. Choosing where to place your energy is fundamental to that freedom. Boundaries are not barriers that keep people out. They are the framework that allows your relationships to be genuinely sustainable rather than chronically draining. When it comes to actually establishing your limits, start with honesty. Be direct and calm about what you need. People respond far better to clarity than to vague signals or passive frustration. Speak from your own experience rather than pointing fingers. Say what you need without framing it as the other person's failure. And once you've set a limit, be consistent holding it, because inconsistency teaches people that your limits are negotiable. There is old wisdom that says the person who understands when to stop never finds themselves in real trouble. Knowing where your limits are and respecting them yourself is how you prevent the slow erosion of your energy and your sense of self. The next time you feel that familiar weight of being stretched beyond what feels right, pause and ask yourself honestly, have I clearly communicated what I need, and am I actually honoring my own boundaries? By choosing your priorities deliberately and protecting the energy you need to meet them, you free yourself from obligation that was never really yours to carry, and you become more present, more generous, and more genuinely connected to the life you actually want to be living. 6. Practice releasing your dependence on outside approval. Here's a scenario you've carefully developed, something you're genuinely proud of, and you bring it forward with a mix of excitement and vulnerability, but rather than being met with encouragement, the room offers criticism, or worse, complete indifference. That particular sting, it's real, and without a strong internal foundation, it can quickly spiral into serious self-doubt. But before you go too far down that road, ask yourself something worth sitting with. Why exactly does what they think carry quite so much weight? The longing for approval is woven deeply into human nature, but making your emotional state entirely dependent on external validation is like trying to build your house on water. The surface is always shifting, and you can never truly settle. Emotional independence begins to take root the moment you stop outsourcing your sense of worth to the opinions floating around you. Think about it this way. Every single person looking at you is doing so through a lens uniquely grounded by their own experiences, their fears, their disappointments, and their assumptions. What they say about you is almost always more about the quality of that lens than the quality of what they're observing. When you take their judgments in and treat them as definitive, you've handed them control over your story and your choices. Why would you willingly do that? Something grounding to return to is this: your worth is not a proposition open for debate. It is not currency that rises with praise and falls with criticism. It is something constant and internal, untouched by the noise of other people's perceptions. Here's a small but instructive example. You arrive somewhere, wearing something that genuinely makes you feel like yourself, and a passing comment from an acquaintance immediately suggests it's an unusual choice. You could allow that one throwaway remark to rattle your confidence for the rest of the day, or you could notice the comment register that it's simply one person's passing opinion and continue forward with your joy intact. When you detach from the machinery of approval seeking, you discover the freedom to actually be who you are without constant adjustment. The ancient Stoic tradition offers something bracing here. Genuine growth often requires being willing to look unconventional to others. People who make meaningful progress frequently go against the current, and seeking the approval of everyone around them would make that impossible. Learning to walk your path even when others don't immediately understand it, that's where authentic freedom lives. Here's a practical way to begin loosening the grip of other people's opinions on your emotional state. When something someone says gets under your skin, pause and examine why. Ask yourself, what genuine authority does this person have over the direction of my life? If the honest answer is none, then notice how much smaller their words immediately become, and return yourself to what actually guides you: your own values, your own sense of direction, and your own relationship with what matters. Then, when a critical or dismissive voice arises, practice observing it without absorbing it. Imagine it as something drifting by, present briefly, and then gone, without ever landing. There is a powerful truth that tells us that living to secure the approval of others makes us perpetually captive to their moods, their biases, and their shifting preferences. That's not a life, it's a performance. Detaching from that performance doesn't mean you stop caring about people. It means you stop requiring their approval as a condition for your own sense of peace. The next time the world's opinion tries to redirect you, pause and ask yourself quietly, whose life is this anyway? And return to your own compass. Because your path is genuinely yours, and it deserves to be walked with your head up. 7. Discover the quiet authority of saying nothing at all. You're in the middle of a heated exchange. The other person says something that lands with real force. You feel the heat of anger rising in your chest. Your entire system wants to respond immediately and sharply to match what they've thrown. And yet, what if, in that precise moment, you simply chose silence? Not retreat, not surrender, but a conscious and deliberate stillness. Silence is genuinely one of the most underestimated sources of strength available to you. when you're surrounded by hostility or provocation. It isn't passivity, it's the deliberate selection of calm over reaction, of self-possession over the temporary satisfaction of a sharp comeback. There's a truth worth carrying here. The less consistently you feed negativity with reaction, the quieter and more spacious your life becomes. Silence communicates something that a flood of words often cannot. It says clearly, "I will not allow your behavior to operate the controls of my inner world." Here's a concrete situation. Imagine a colleague attempting to embarrass you in front of others during a meeting, working to make you appear incompetent or foolish. Two paths open before you. Engage in the back and forth that they're clearly seeking, which gives them exactly what they want. Or hold your ground in composed silence, and in doing so, show everyone present who actually has command of themselves. By choosing not to engage, you starve the moment of the dramatic fuel it was designed to consume, and you demonstrate something far more compelling than any comeback could. One of the great thinkers of the Stoic tradition observed that the most powerful reply to anger is often no reply at all. Anger is a fire, and it requires constant feeding to keep burning. When you withdraw your reaction, you withdraw the fuel, and the whole blaze simply runs out of what it needs to continue. Think of silence in these moments as armor. It doesn't attack, it doesn't advance, but it holds firm, and it cannot be broken by provocation. When someone is pushing at you, allow yourself a breath before you do anything. Let the space exist. Listen fully without feeling compelled to interrupt or explain or justify. And when a response is genuinely warranted, make it measured and precise, not inflated by emotion. A beautiful teaching from contemplative tradition reminds us that words earn their place only when they add something to what stillness already holds. This is not about swallowing your feelings indefinitely. It's about developing the discernment to know which moments actually deserve your voice, and which ones are better answered with presence and quiet. There is also something deeply practical here. Think about how many words spoken in anger you've later wished you could unseat. Silence simply removes that category of regret. It creates the space in which genuine reflection can happen and thoughtful response can emerge, rather than reflexive reaction. The next time you feel the pull toward an immediate, sharp response, ask yourself first, will entering this exchange actually contribute something, or will it simply pour fuel on an existing fire? By staying in your stillness, you maintain the story, you maintain your composure, and you maintain something more valuable than being right in the moment. You maintain your peace and your dignity. And that is a kind of winning that never requires raising your voice. 8. Allow gratitude to become the antidote to anger. Consider a day where almost nothing goes the way you'd planned. Your schedule falls apart. Someone makes a dismissive remark, and suddenly, even the smallest friction feels enormous. The frustration starts to build, and a voice inside asks, "Why does everything have to be this hard right now?" And then pause. What if instead of running a mental inventory of everything that has gone wrong, you shifted your attention deliberately toward what is still going right? Gratitude has this remarkable capacity to interrupt the momentum of anger and reframe even genuinely difficult moments into something you can actually work with. Here's a truth worth testing. You cannot hold genuine gratitude and genuine anger inside yourself at the same time. They simply don't coexist. Gratitude functions like a reset for your nervous system. It pulls you back from the edge of the spiral and returns you to the awareness that even in a difficult moment, good things still exist. Here's something practical. Take a situation most people find universally frustrating. You're running late to something important, and traffic has come to a complete standstill. The cars aren't moving, the minutes are ticking, and the tension is climbing. Rather than directing your frustration at the motionless vehicles ahead, try this. Pause, take a real breath, and identify 3 genuine things you can be thankful for right now. Perhaps you have a working vehicle. Perhaps you have an opportunity waiting for you at your destination. Perhaps there's music you enjoy playing right there in the car. It might sound small and almost too simple, but this deliberate redirect can shift your entire emotional experience within moments. A thinker from the classical tradition once observed that gratitude stands not just as a virtue in its own right, but as the foundation from which all other virtues grow. It doesn't only dissolve the immediate heat of anger, it builds over time the capacity for resilience, for patience, and for perspective. It's a resource you can access anywhere at any time, requiring nothing external to work. To build gratitude into a genuine daily practice, start with this. When anger or frustration begins to rise, before it gains full momentum, pause and ask yourself, what is one real thing I can be grateful for right now? Even if everything else feels heavy, there is always something. At the end of each day, spend a few minutes writing down 3 things that went well, regardless of how modest they appear. Doing this consistently over time genuinely retrains the mind to scan for what is working rather than defaulting to what isn't. And when you encounter something genuinely challenging, try approaching it with a different frame. What is available to me in this situation that I might otherwise miss? What does this teach me? There is ancient wisdom that reminds us to be thankful for the small victories, because each of them is something that might easily not have been there. Gratitude shifts your orientation from scarcity to presence. It doesn't mean pretending difficulty isn't real or manufacturing false positivity. It means deliberately choosing to give more weight to what is still good than to what has gone sideways. The next time anger begins its familiar approach, pause before it fully arrives and simply ask, what am I genuinely thankful for right now? You'll find that in almost every case, the gratitude doesn't just ease the anger, it actually replaces it with something more useful. And in that shift, you'll realize that the peace you've been looking for was never something waiting for you out there. It's something you build right here, inside yourself. 9. Transform criticism from a wound into a compass. Picture this. You've just put something genuine into the world, an idea, a project, a piece of work that required real thought and real courage, and the response that comes back isn't encouragement, it's criticism, immediate and perhaps not gently delivered. Your first instinct is to defend yourself, and that instinct is understandable, because something you made is in some way an extension of you. But here's the shift that changes everything. What if criticism, no matter how awkwardly or even unkindly it arrives, could be received not as an attack, but as information? Criticism, when you're willing to move past the initial sting, carries real value. It can illuminate things you couldn't see from where you were standing. It can challenge assumptions you didn't know you were making. It can push you toward a version of your work or yourself that is genuinely stronger. When you train yourself to receive rather than reject criticism, your entire relationship with growth changes. Here's an example. You've been working on a presentation for days, and a colleague reviews it and points out several significant problems. Your first option is to assume they're trying to undermine you and dismiss everything they've said. Your second option is to breathe and ask yourself, honestly, is there something true and useful here? Can this actually help me? The second choice is harder, but it's the one that produces something worthwhile. There is a beautifully balanced way of thinking about feedback. It's most useful when it functions like rain, just enough to nourish what's growing, without so much force that it flattens everything. Flat. And this framing matters because not every piece of criticism deserves equal weight. Some comes from people who genuinely want to help you improve. Some comes from people working through their own frustration or insecurity. The crucial skill is learning to filter, to hold what is genuinely constructive and release what is simply noise. Here's a practical approach. When criticism arrives before you say or decide anything, take a breath and let the immediate emotional reaction settle. Then consider where this is coming from. Is this person positioned to actually see something useful? Are they trying to help, even if the delivery could have been kinder? And then, regardless of how it was delivered, ask yourself, what can I take from this that actually serves my growth? Let's bring this into a personal context. Imagine a family member making a pointed remark about a life choice you've made, your career, your relationship, your priorities. Rather than defending yourself or shutting down entirely, you might simply say, "I hear what you're saying, and I want to think about it." This is not capitulation, it's maturity. It ends the escalation, and it gives you the private space to examine what, if anything, was actually worth considering. An ancient thinker once remarked wisely that when someone tells you of your fault, consider this: they've only noticed the one and don't yet know the rest. This reframing is quietly liberating. It reminds you not to make criticism into something larger or more definitive than it actually is. It's one person's perspective from their particular vantage point, not a verdict on your entire worth. Here's what to ask yourself when feedback stings. What specifically can I learn from this? Does this reveal something about me, or does it mostly reveal something about the person saying it? And what would my best self do with this information? A profound observation from Eastern thought tells us that understanding others requires intelligence, but understanding ourselves requires genuine wisdom. Criticism, approached with real openness, becomes one of the sharpest tools available for that kind of self-understanding. It's uncomfortable, it doesn't always arrive well wrapped, but growth almost never feels pleasant while it's happening. The people who allow feedback to move them forward rather than simply defending against it, they develop a kind of resilience and self-awareness that genuine comfort simply cannot produce. So, the next time critique arrives, meet it with a pause and an open hand. Take from it what genuinely serves you, release what doesn't, and remember that your ability to grow through difficulty is not a small thing. It is the whole thing. 10. Practice the profound discipline of releasing what no longer serves you. Imagine carrying a piece of burning coal in your closed hand, with every intention of eventually throwing it at someone who wronged you, but while you're waiting for the right moment, planning the right approach, the coal keeps doing what coal does. It burns you, and the person you intended it for feels nothing. Anger left to sit. Resentment nurtured in the dark grudges kept polished and ready. They work exactly this way. The harm circles back to you far more consistently and far more deeply than it ever reaches the person who originally caused the pain. The genuine act of strength is not the holding, it is the releasing. Letting go is not the same as deciding what happened was acceptable or that the hurt wasn't real. It is the choice to stop carrying the weight of what you cannot change and to free your energy for what is actually happening now. When you truly let something go, you reclaim your focus, your peace, and your full presence in your own life. There's a teaching that captures this with remarkable economy. Holding on to anger is a form of consuming something harmful in the hope that it harms someone else. It simply doesn't work that way. Think about something that genuinely wounded you in the past, perhaps a betrayal, an unfair situation, or words that were meant to cut deep. Count, honestly, the hours you've spent turning that moment over and over in your mind, and the energy you've spent on imaginary confrontations or fantasies of some satisfying resolution. Letting go is the exit from that loop. It's the choice to stop replaying a moment that is finished and to step back into the one that is actually unfolding around you. Here's a real situation you'll recognize. You've done strong work, and a colleague absorbs the recognition for it. You could spend days weighted by the injustice, turning it over, generating bitterness that seeps into your concentration and your mood. Or you could make a different choice. Recognize that your value is not determined by a single, unacknowledged moment, and redirect your energy toward the next thing, the thing that actually moves you forward. There's wisdom that speaks to this. Letting go of a fixed idea of who you are creates the possibility of becoming who you might yet be. And this applies to more than just anger. Letting go of the need for everything to be perfect, of the fear that follows failure, of the compulsion to control outcomes that were never really controllable. This is what creates genuine freedom. The freedom to meet your life as it actually is, to find unexpected possibility inside the unpredictability, and to move through difficulty without being permanently defined by it. Here's how to begin this practice in a way that is genuine rather than forced. Start by acknowledging what you feel without judgment. You don't have to rush past the hurt or the anger or the disappointment, pretending it's gone before it is. Doesn't work and tends to make things worse. Allow yourself to feel what you feel, and then ask, what can I take from this experience that makes me stronger or wiser? And then place your attention back on the present, because that's where your actual power is. You can't change what has already happened, but you have full access to what you do right now. Think of the practice like opening your hand and releasing what's inside. The longer you grip, the more it costs you, and the moment you open your fingers, something immediately shifts. You become lighter, and that lightness makes everything more possible. A great thinker in the Stoic tradition reminds us not to allow what lies outside your control to disturb your peace. Simply release it and discover what that release makes available. This is not about allowing people to treat you without regard or pretending injustice doesn't matter. It's about making a clear-eyed choice about where you are going to invest the energy you have. By releasing what cannot be changed, you make room for what can be shaped. A better relationship with your own mind, a more present way of living, a more genuine engagement with the people and experiences actually in front of you. So the next time you feel the familiar grip of old anger or regret tightening around something long past, stop and ask yourself, is this worth what it's costing me, and what becomes possible if I put it down? The answer, when you sit with it honestly, will always point toward the same place, toward releasing it. Because the truth is, becoming lighter is becoming stronger, and every time you choose to open your hand, you take back something that was always yours: your peace, your presence, and your freedom. And there you have it, 10 genuinely powerful lessons for building real emotional mastery and moving through your life with a steadiness that nothing outside you can permanently disturb. These aren't just observations to consider once and set aside. They are living practices, tools you can reach for in real time, every single day when the pressure is actually on. Remember, the entire aim isn't to flatten your feelings or become someone who pretends nothing touches them. The aim is to develop the clarity and the strength to respond to difficulty from your center rather than from your edges. Emotional mastery is not a story about what happens to you. It's entirely a story about how you meet what happens. The capacity to stay grounded, centered, and genuinely free that lives in you already, and it grows with every deliberate choice you make. Carry these lessons into your actual days. Practice that pause before you respond. Build the limits that protect your energy and release your grip on the people and circumstances that were never yours to control. Every time you choose your peace over a reactive moment, you take one more real step toward the kind of life that feels unshakable from the inside. If something in this episode landed for you, consider passing it along to someone who might benefit from a little more steadiness in their days. And if you have something from your own experience, something that has helped you stay grounded when everything around you was pushing you off balance, I genuinely want to hear it. Drop it in the comments below. Thank you for being here and for giving this your time and attention. Remember, emotional freedom is not a destination you arrive at permanently. It is a practice you return to every day. So keep showing up, keep choosing deliberately, and keep growing into the version of yourself that no outside force can shake. Until next time, take good care of yourself and stay grounded.